Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, runner of boards, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the compilation encounter book Encounters in the Forgotten Realms, designed by CZRPG et al. There's actually a lot of designers that worked on this, but please check the show notes below for the full credit list. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, you can reach me via email, Twitter, or Discord, or my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. You should be familiar with the name CZRPG. That's actually hard for me to say. Or Christian Zeuch, whom I've had the pleasure of reviewing his works for, I think, years now. The Encounters series, when he encounters in Saltmarsh, encounters in Barovia, encounters in Ravenloft, encounters in the Faeriewild, deeper descent into Avernus, all of these different Encounters books for either for published 5e campaign adventures or just for various regions which have also been explored via those published 5e campaign adventures. I think I've reviewed maybe only a third of them. There are actually a lot of them out there. And this book, the whole goal is to put 8 previously released encounter books into one big mega book. And I believe it's for the first time print on demand as well. You get a chance to get this as a physical copy, and these are very attractive books. They have they're very well organized, they're professionally edited, awesome battle maps, which has always been a huge thumbs up for me. And CZRPG has an amazing art style that really meshes pretty well with what I like to have at my games, and the fact that a lot of times with encounters, that's where you're lacking the maps, right? Because when you get especially these 5e adventure books, you're going to get the dungeon maps, you're going to get the overland maps, and so those are taken care of in terms of where we need our battle maps for, but we often don't have just the regular, we're traveling on a road and I want to have a road ambush map, or it's a little hex crawl adventure and we've got all these, random encounter tables of things you can draw, but I don't have like a go-to map for that. And this one provides maps for almost every single encounter that's provided here. In fact, I'm going to itemize all of this for you so that you know exactly what you're going to get in here. But I just want to say up front, these are all available separately and have been previously released on the DM's Guild. There's no really new content included here, except for the fact that they've been organized to all fit their various layouts and formatting together to where it looks more uniform, I believe, and it's been given another pass, with another editing pass. Otherwise, so the main point of this, I believe, is to do the print on demand, or hopefully, I haven't seen the actual price, and I don't really comment on prices too much in my reviews. Hopefully, it's just a good deal to grab these if you haven't already dipped your toes into the Encounter series, which I would, for the most part, recommend. But what I'm also going to do with this review is a ranking video of the ones that are included in here, because I do very much like some a lot more than others. And depending on which campaigns you're thinking about running or which ones you're enjoying, that might determine on which ones you're interested in grabbing to use as encounters in your ongoing campaigns. So we get Encounters in Schult, which features 10 encounters designed specifically for Tomb of Annihilation, 3 expanded stat blocks for Tomb of Annihilation, and a new rule for the Death Curse, so it's a little more interesting for the players to deal with. Encounters in the Faeriewild, which includes 10 new encounters, not necessarily designed for Well Beyond the Witchlight, by the way, which is kind of par for the course here. In fact, it actually explains very helpfully in the beginning, right here on this page 9, that about half the books were actually designed after that particular campaign adventure came out, and so they were able to use that and design for it, and the other half were not, so they just kind of came out at the same time, and thus they have the same themes and ideas, but don't actually use any of the story stuff, and that can be beneficial or non-beneficial, kind of depending on, well, I'll go into in both ways. Encounters in Icewind Dale features 24 encounters, the biggest one, I believe, 14 creatures and 3 magic items. Icewind Dale Expanded, which means, yes, there are 2 encounter books for Icewind Dale. However, Icewind Dale Expanded does use things designed specifically for Rime of the Frostmaiden for 15 total encounters. Deeper Descent into Avernus is designed specifically for Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus with 20 encounters, as well as some neat ways of linking a lot of these encounters into the Dead 3 storyline, which is kind of a dungeon crawl and little breadcrumbs of a story that happens early on when you're still in Baldur's Gate. And this allows you to kind of revisit what those cultists are doing throughout these various encounters, which I think is really, really cool. Encounters in Candlekeep includes 20 encounters, 15 detailed NPCs, and 16 magic items. Queen's Horde Expanded includes 21 encounters designed specifically for Horde of the Dragon Queen, and Encounters in the Underdark is the smallest but not the weakest, in my opinion, with 7 encounters and 5 magic items, mainly because I think those encounters are actually really, really good and well designed. There's also a really fun foreword here written by Ed Greenwood himself, the father of the Forgotten Realms, really quite lengthy and long foreword, which I really enjoy. But I think the main advantage you're going to get here are encounters are useful for everybody, and maps are useful to have with encounters. An encounter, by the way, is not an adventure, and it's not a layer, although 2 or 3 of them almost become layers, especially the Underdark ones, could almost be considered layers. But an encounter is literally like it's an event, a scene that happens typically while you're traveling from one location to another, and a lot of times we as DMs, we rely on, encounter tables, but I think the better solution is to kind of have these scripted encounters all ready to go, and they'd be a lot more meaningful for the players. And that's what this provides. And I think a lot of the modern 5e adventure books do a better job with encounters, where they'll have, they may use a table, but they'll also have just multiple paragraphs of more interesting scripted events to be able to throw at your players. So we do have some good encounters, but I enjoy, for the most part, the encounters that are designed here. I think they're tied in pretty thematically with all their various locations and storylines, and the maps are just still a very huge thumbs up. Also, a really good job with the way it's organized, which I'll show you a little bit of an example. This is Encounters in Chult. And by the way, I can't do a big dive like I do, because I've literally done entire reviews on just one of these books, by the way. This has 8 of these books, so I can't make this 8 times as long as my usual reviews. Instead, I'm going to go a lot quicker. I'm going to rank them, give kind of an overview, and hopefully that'll be enough for you to make an informed decision. But there's so much this thing is over 300 pages, and we're still trying to come up with a 30 minutes or less, or your money back timeline here. But I love the way these encounters are organized. It's been the biggest perks to these encounter series is they're very easy to read, easy to parse, and easy to run also. But the fact that it spells out at the beginning of them the level, the encounter type, which could include puzzle or combat or social or exploration or, half and half with slashes, an encounter overview, which is like a 1-sentence elevator pitch to just describe what the hell is going on here, and then a specific location, and that breaks it up between background, the encounter itself, any possible outcomes the players could have, in other words, the different choices they could make, and then any rewards that they would receive. It's extremely helpful to be able to organize it in this way, and it makes it so easy to read for me as the DM. All right, so the way I'm going to review this product is I'm actually going to rank them, which those of you who have seen my ranking videos for the anthology stuff might be familiar with. I'm going to go from what I would consider the weakest / I don't say worse, that's kind of a harsh, but it's the least to the greatest in terms of how I would rank and feel how well all of these encounter books are. And I'm going to go from the lowest to the best. So if you only watch the first 10 minutes of this video, I may come off being more critical than what I actually think of this whole book, because we'll get to the ones that I think are really, really amazing. All right, so we're going to start off with what I would consider the weakest of the bunch, and that is, to write down the page numbers. Again, it's so much fun reviewing these 300-page ones. Queen's Horde Expanded. This is the one that was designed specifically for Horde of the Dragon Queen, which is the Tyranny of Dragon storyline, and it was the beginning adventure that came out when really D&D was still under basically, like, we could almost consider it early access or beta testing at this point, in terms of while they were constructing it to where it would release basically at the same time. And I think it just has some of the weakest encounters of the bunch. It does go, by chapter, which is nice. So, like, here's the chapter when they're traveling on the road. Here's the chapter that opens while Greenest is being attacked by the dragon siege. Here's the chapter in the dragon's hatchery. Some of the encounters are fine. There's an encounter with the Black Dragon twins in the swampy area, which is kind of interesting. You can explore a troglodyte hideout in the hatchery, but they're often very, very short, excessively short encounters. Not all. I mean, look at this page. These 2 pages have 3 encounters on. Like, a lot of these are like half a page. They just don't. That's really cool art, though. I was pretty disappointed overall in terms of the map level, the encounter level. I don't know if this was an earlier one or one that just didn't quite get enough time in the oven to cook, but just very simplistic. And a lot of them, or too many of them, are just, hey, they almost feel like they would be part of a regular 5e book with, a little paragraph that's like, and then they get ambushed by these guys, and then that's the whole like encounter. So just not nearly as much thought put into it. This was the only one that I had ever looked at from this reviewer. I would be like, this isn't that, this isn't really worth it. So thankfully there are much better ones than that, but that is the weakest one on here to me. Next up, we have one that I have previously reviewed, which I would also consider to be weak, but not bad like the other one is, to me, just kind of bad. This one is, to me, kind of makes up for it with the quantity, but I think the quality isn't quite there. This is Encounters in Icewind Dale. This one features the most number of encounters. It was designed before Rime of the Frostmaiden, so it doesn't have any ties to Rime of the Frostmaiden, and I feel like a lot of people who are going to be using Icewind Dale in 5e are going to be doing Rime of the Frostmaiden, so it's a little bit irksome. And I just didn't have a lot of the encounters that really, meant anything to me or helped. It's similar to Queen's Horde Expanded. It's a lot of just simple combat encounters. I think the most interesting one was a swimming competition in freezing water in one of the 10 towns. And at one point, there's like an abominable Yeti rampaging through the town. Those are a little bit more interesting. There's a lot of like weird foresty stuff, which I didn't think Icewind Dale had that many forests. I was expecting more like open tundra stuff happening. But still, we get a lot of battle maps, and I think some of this could be incorporated pretty well into a Rime campaign or any kind of snowy area. But it has a lot of encounters, which is very cool. I just didn't think any of them were as good as the ones that we have above them, which next on the list at number 6 is not page 6. Encounters in Candlekeep is another one I reviewed actually fully on my channel. This one, I think it nails the theme pretty well. The problem is I didn't ever consider the theme to be terribly interesting in the first place. Candlekeep Mysteries, all the adventures are pulled from books at this, supernatural, or not supernatural, but very popular, cool, big library fortress area that's got all this different lore and information. But most of the adventures in Candlekeep Mysteries don't actually take place in Candlekeep. Only a handful of them do. The rest of them, it just has to do with a magic book. In this particular encounter book, they all take place in Candlekeep, and I think there's just only so much you can do inside of a magic library. And unfortunately, most of them end up being kind of social or skill challenge based. There's investigations, there's research project, there's magical curses. There are 2 particularly cool combat. There's only like 3 combat encounters, and 2 of them are like tier 4 combat encounters. There's like this big like Asmodeus cult armada that comes in and invades the entire kingdom, which is really crazy. Another one is dealing with the ghost dragon Mirim. The big advantage this one has, I think, it is very thematic. It's just not a theme that I resonated with very deeply. Is it's got a lot of magic items and a lot of detailed NPCs that it uses at the end, which I'm trying to scroll through very carefully, where it lists just a lot of different named NPCs that are used here, which is actually impressive, and I don't think is used in any other encounter books. Like, we do get extra stat blocks and creatures used in those encounter books, but as far as I'm aware, we don't get all these detailed, like, literally traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, like role-playing notes, really. In fact, it even says, take this stat block and then that's already in the monster manual or something, a basic, NPC stat block, and then modify it in this way. So it's not really stat blocks, it's just way to roleplay NPCs, which that's actually really helpful and interesting and helps bring a lot of these encounters to life, and frankly is just a great resource to have for any kind of book, let alone an encounter booklet. So that's why that one is a little bit higher, and a lot of really good magic items that are very cool and thematically tied to Candlekeep as well. All right, number 5. So we've seen the ones with kind of the most encounters, and now we're going to go to the one with the least encounters, which is Encounters the Underdog. This one only has like 7 encounters and is not specifically tied to Out of the Abyss, but just features some interesting Underdark encounters. But the ones that are included here are really, really cool, to where I was like, damn, I would love to have this one be a little bit longer. I mean, the Underdark in general just lends itself to cool encounters. So this is, kind of the opposite of Candlekeep to me. This is just, it's a mega dungeon world essentially, and you could come up with a lot of really cool ideas. And sure enough, the designer has, including a roper with a bridge, having the roper on a ceiling by the bridge, and of course the water is full of quippers. Just, you can imagine how cool that's a scenario. There's a merchant hunted by drow. There's a deep dragon's lair, which is like an entire, I mean, look at this. This goes beyond what an encounter normally is. This is an entire like little mini dungeon layer thing with this deep dragon, which is really interesting. There's a lot of cool like puzzle rooms that have to do with like light and riddles. I was just honestly very impressed. Kind of the opposite of Encounters in Icewind Dale, where this one was all about quantity over quality. There's very few encounters relatively. I mean, 7 is still a good number of encounters, but just relative to what the others give you, which is 10, 15, 20. This one only has a handful, and yet I honestly thought they were all very, very cool. And if you were going to run anything in the Underdark, gosh, this is actually a really great resource. And the maps here, the map design obviously can go into some really cool, interesting directions. So I was pretty damn positive on Encounters in the Underdark. Coming up to number 4, so now we're in the top half, is oops, I messed that one up. Icewind Dale Expanded. So I try to flip the pages around. No, I don't want to add text. Thank you. This is, to me, just an improved version of Encounters in Icewind Dale. And I believe I actually mentioned in my review of that one and this one that was kind of how I looked at this one. This one specifically was made after Rime of the Frost Maiden and takes into context all the different interesting events that happen in Rime of the Frost Maiden, and thus it provides, to me, a lot more interesting encounters that can deal with the horror theme, that can deal with the arcane wizards and the nether theme, and the sacrifice thing, which I only touched at a little bit in my campaign, which is, we're actually reaching the end of it now. I ended up actually using a encounter from this book, in fact, which is, if you allow me a moment of hubris, I think is the highest praise I can give an encounter product or any adventure product. It means that I want to use it in my own game, which is this one, Wrath of the Giant, which involves you first see a polar bear come up to you, and he's got this like, barding, and then you can befriend him or do whatever, and then you'll later come across the giant who's looking for his like trained polar bear, and like, where the hell's my polar bear? So you get to deal with this cool like social situation, and then how do you deal with the polar bear, how do you deal with the giant? And then I later had the giant lead them to or send them to what is it called, Jarlmoot, I believe, and tied that into my story in that way. So I really enjoyed that encounter, and frankly I think there's a lot of really cool ideas here. I didn't end up, that was the only one I ended up using in my campaign, but there's a lot of them that work, I think, really well. There's a better intro for Vallin that uses her in a non-crappy way, which she's just appears as this weird like all-knowing NPC that knows everything, and as written in the campaign. There's a cool way of using an intellect devourer from A Descendant. You can hunt someone down who's fleeing from the sacrifice lottery. There's a really neat one where you can uncover like the Zentarum plot in Targos, which is something they tease about in the campaign. So this one I think works really well, and I'm intimately familiar with this campaign, and I'm telling you, this is a fantastic supplement if you're running Rime of the Frost Maiden. And I think this one just straight up is an improvement over Encounters Icewind Dale, I believe. All right, number 3, we go to one that I am actually not familiar with at all. Well, I am a little bit familiar with. So it's been a long time since I reviewed Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, years since it came out, basically, and I haven't thought about it really hardly at all since then, and I don't think it's considered to be one of the better campaigns. It's probably about bottom half, actually. It's got a lot of problems from what I've read about it. And yet, I will say that this Deeper Descent into Avernus is one of my favorite encounter books from this product, because it just nails the coolness and the kind of heavy metal like theme of Avernus that I would want to run with the whole like war machine, or what they call infernal engines, and just almost like a Mad Max like heavy metal, just like give me that cool. What was that one with the Jack Black character? Brutal Legend is kind of how I'm picturing. Just give me that theme for the theme of hell and Avernus, and I will run all over that. And, a little bit of goofy, but like dark humor, instead of just turning into this big, creepy, like Dark Souls-esque thing. That's not how I would want to run my campaign. And I think the designer it kind of does a similar thing with here, while also providing some interesting stuff in Baldur's Gate itself before you make it down to that city, make it down to Avernus. And then it does this cool thing with the Dead 3, which I really enjoy when these encounter books try to go a little above and beyond what they're trying to do and just give you kind of random encounters for different areas. This one, in addition to that, says, hey, for these couple encounters, we're also tying in elements from the Dead 3, which, again, I'm not terribly familiar with Descent into Avernus, but I remember it had like this one dungeon crawl in Baldur's Gate that it had to do with the Merkel, Ball, and I forget the third one, of these cultists, of these evil gods, and what does that matter for the context of El Terrell being pulled into Avernus and having to save that city? Well, this kind of helps create those through lines and those links. So I really enjoyed that, and I think that makes that a little bit more compelling, and hopefully fixes one of the bigger gaps in this campaign. Just to go over some ideas, I also think that it seems to be partially inspired from the actual Baldur's Gate games. I think the designer even mentions the name John Irenicus at one point, who is the main villain of Baldur's Gate 2, I believe. One of the better video game villains ever written, I think, in my opinion, but probably that ranking will be forgotten about as we all get older. There's the demons have stolen a bunch of modern weapons from the devils, literally like grenades, pistols, dynamite they can try to steal back and attack from. There's an awakened infernal engine named Demon Grinder they can come across. This one, Infernal Engine encounter. I think it has just very cool maps also. A lot of cool like lava flow. Look at how badass this map is where you're fighting this freaking, I think it's what is it? The Sword of Zariel. I think it's a Balor or something. Bell. I don't remember this. See, unfortunately, I don't remember the fact that I don't remember this campaign very well, and yet I was absolutely enthralled with this encounter book should tell you how good this one in particular is, because unlike Rime, I'm not intimately familiar, so I don't know where I would put this, and this, but just reading through this made me actually more excited to run that campaign based on, and again, partially because, again, the Candlekeep Mysteries problem, Avernus is a great opportunity for cool encounters, right? It's an exotic location, and those often make for the more interesting encounter opportunities than the non, super exotic locations. So this one is my number 3. Number 2 is Encounters in the Faeriewild. Not having to do anything with Wild Beyond the Witchlight, instead just is very good encounter books. Now, I will say, Christian Zeuch, is the Faeriewild actually in the Forgotten Realms? Because the whole point of this book was saying encounters in Forgotten Realms, so you're putting them, I get that like Saltmarsh, the encounters in Saltmarsh didn't make it in here, encounters in Barovia didn't make it in here, or Ravenloft, and yet encounters in the Faeriewild did? I'm kind of side-eyeing that real quick. I love that it's in here because it's my second favorite one of this group. But it's funny because I don't know if this is considered Forgotten Realms or not. I think you're cheating a little bit on that. But I'd love to hear your reasoning for it on why this one was particularly included. And, for example, was like Encounters in Ravenloft wasn't. Because you can teleport, make your portal way, whatever, into Faeriewild just like you can Ravenloft/Barovia. So I find that a little weird that those got excluded and this one got included. However, this one is fantastic for the same reason of Avernus and the Underdark, where the Faeriewild can just be filled with really great opportunities. But this one made it to number 2 because I think the designer does such a great job at realizing the full theme and how the Faeriewild is often not a big, it's not hell, it's not Avernus, it's not the Underdark, it's not filled with a bunch of monsters, it's filled with a bunch of mischievous creatures who are, very Alice in Wonderland. It's coming across just ridiculous things, and it's a lot of really fun social opportunities. And yes, there should be danger and some opportunities for battle, but a lot of times it's just opportunities for just weird social things like making a deal with a hag to save a village, or having some kind of courtly session in the forest, being pulled into that and asked to serve on the jury for it. There's hunting down a mischievous quarry with a bunch of Corrid with a bunch of dwarves, or you could maybe try to heal a corrupted gold dragon. So there's just, I think, a lot of really cool ideas, and it runs with that theme very, very well. And the battle maps are absolutely rich and gorgeous and do a good job of giving you both like the bright, sunny Faeriewild and also the dark, creepy, like shadowy Faeriewild that I think it can encompass both of those. So I was very impressed with this. It also has a good combination of just a pretty large number, I believe. Nope, only 10. Never mind. Only 10 encounters. In fact, my top 2 books in this bunch have only 10 encounters, and yet I guess there's such good encounters that I ranked them so high with the good maps and everything. Number 1, if you haven't realized it already, because we've already passed by and you already know it exists here, is the Encounters in Chult. This one is easily number one. Tomb of Annihilation, I'm very intimately familiar with, as most of you should know. I think it's a top tier adventure for most folks. It's probably like top 3, honestly. Maybe even their number, probably number 2 after Curse of Strahd is usually number 1. Chult is just an awesome adventure location, teeming with potentially great encounters. And this is just teeming with an additional freaking awesome encounters to me. Just to go over some. You can come across a group of Tabaxi and Tridents fighting over a dead Yuan-Ti scout, and the message in that bottle is about providing the secret entrance to the Fane of the Night Serpent, which is an awesome idea. There is a bridge, which is actually a mimic, and we'll attack when they cross the bridge, and then a bunch of Terrafolk attack you at the same time. There's a bunch of non-hostile Grung in a mystic pool, but if the players don't play nice and jack with them, a Froghemoth comes out of the pool and attacks. There's a waterfall that's actually a broken decanter of endless water that spawns a bunch of water creatures and water elementals and water weirds and things. You get to find a Tabaxi like island village, and then later you can get a quest to go save a Tabaxi who's scaling up a cliff in order to try to steal a feather from a rock. And of course, there's an amazing opportunity where you're at the perfect moment where you're trying to grab him and get him back, and you see that rock coming from a distance. Now it becomes this very tense, like, we got to get the fuck out of here because rocks are real nasty pants. These are really awesome encounters that I'm gushing about because they're incredible. They're amazing. I think Tomb of Annihilation is a great campaign, and I think these encounters are really awesome that fit just perfectly well with what's going on there. Also, and additionally, it provides what they consider, they're called expanded encounters, but really they're just expanded stat blocks, but they're important ones. For example, the zombie T-Rex is a really cool idea, and yet if you look at the actual stat block, you think, it's a little bit undertuned for what I want to use it for. This one, the Ghoulish Tyrannosaurus Rex, is a just better, cooler version of that initial stat block. Bag of Nails, who's a Tabaxi who's kind of gone senile, who's supposed to lay a bunch of traps and could be this kind of cool, like anti-hunter PC character that you meet in Omu. I'm not even sure I even used this particular character or not. This provides a better stat block. And then finally the King of Feathers, which I did use, and most people do because a T-Rex boss fight seems like a great idea. However, again, like the zombie T-Rex, you look at it and you think, its stat block is still pretty disappointing. I don't know if I can really work with that. And this provides a better version of that, which, man, it would be nice if the designer had done that for the other encounter books too. If instead of just giving new encounters, which are good, instead take some of the already in place encounters or stat blocks in those adventures and be like, hey, here's maybe some ideas for how to shift and change that around. Because a lot of times I like the stuff that's in the 5e campaign books, and yet I will have to modify them and change them. Maybe I need to upscale them or downscale them, or my party is just particularly powerful and I know, my gosh, this creature, it's such a cool idea. This location is such a cool idea, and yet these are the actual things are underwhelming in here. How do I fix that? I would love the designer to do that as part of the encounter book, specifically the ones that tie in specifically to those campaigns. And then finally, we get some helpful new rules for the Death Curse, because I think the Death Curse is also problematic, and most DMs, including me, had to change it, where it doesn't just like kill you after so many days or deteriorate you. Maybe some other things that can have happen that exist as like an ongoing debuff that makes them care about it, and yet doesn't just become this, horrible thing that insta kills you or something. So very, very cool. I think encounters in Chult is definitely my number one. Phew, we did it. We went through all 8 of them, and you got my opinions right there. Let's go over my pros and cons for encounters in the Forgotten Realms. Pros. This compilation book combines 8 previously released encounter books with over 120 encounters. I don't think there's a bigger one than this. Cheating a little bit because they're all previously released, of course, and I've always made sure to state that again and again. But if you missing some of these or missing most of them, I think this is going to be the best way to jump on board with having those encounter books. Pro encounters feature a variety of role-playing, combat, exploration, and puzzles. There is a huge variety. Some of them do that variety a little bit better than others. For example, encounters in Candlekeep doesn't have enough combat encounters, but for the most part, and maybe encounters in the Faeriewild has more social encounters, but that one makes more sense to me. But for the most part, I think there's a really good variety and balance specifically of having those, because they're not all combat encounters. They're not all just, social scenes or something. I think the best ones offer a really nice balance of all those different pillars of D&D. Pro, easy to read formatting and layout, organizing encounters by type, level, location, and overview. This is very, very important and helpful, and probably the biggest plus to this designer specifically and his series over any other encounter books that I've seen, which is how easy it is to get the information quickly, and it just, everything makes sense. It's a skill. It's a skill being able to, first of all, design interesting stuff. Yes, that's good, but then you need to be able to present that information to other people in a written format, you know, potential DMs, to where they can then run those things. And, you know, I need that information to be as succinct and well organized and bullet pointed as possible. And don't make it over too long. Don't make it run too long, but let me, you know, get it together. And that is going to be what's ultimately the most helpful. And of course, the Pro nearly 100 full color battle maps by CZRPG, which I really do like the battle map style. It's not quite, if you notice that Horde's Queen expanded and maybe a couple others didn't exactly have one in, so it's not like every single one of them has exactly one, but most of them do. And I think most of the later releases did include one battle map with every single encounter. And I believe this version, even if you get the print on demand, gives you a PDF or a bunch of image files that include the gridded and non-gridded versions. And then there are, I believe, separately available bundles that include different variations that include like the whole thing at night or the whole thing in rain or something like that if you really want to go crazy with your map art. But if you just wanted a map pack, I mean, there's probably cheaper alternatives to do that, but I think it goes really well with the actual encounters here. Huge plus, as always, for me, who somebody who runs on a VTT, is a big thumbs up. My only con is that some encounter books are better than others. They're not all as high quality as I was hoping for. I think the top half are absolutely excellent. Encounters in Chult, Faeriewild, Descent into Avernus, and Icewind Dale Expanded. Actually, I would probably extend that to 5, the top 5. Encounters in the Underdark. I also really enjoyed that one, even though it's shorter than the others. The bottom 3, ironically, 2 of them I'd already previously reviewed and thought they were, you know, fine, but not too great. Encounters in Candlekeep and in Icewind Dale. And then Queen's Horde Expanded was the only one that I read that was like, oh, this is even actually kind of worse than the 2 that I already reviewed and wasn't the most positive on. So I think that's still a really good ratio of content, but it does bring into the fact that if you wanted to pick and choose and a la carte it, it may be a better option to get them separately. It depends on what the bundle deal is. And again, I don't comment on the pricing factor, but that is something. Or if you were only wanting to run, you know, the Tyranny of Dragon storyline and seeing like what kind of stuff was in there, that's probably going to be your weakest offer versus Rime of the Frost Maiden, you know, a Faeriewild adventure, Tomb of Annihilation, an Underdark adventure. I think those are going to get a lot more bang for your buck. Descent into Avernus, very much so. Final verdict. If you've somehow missed the Encounter series, Encounters in the Forgotten Realms is an excellent starter pack with dozens of well-organized and easy-to-run scenarios and battle maps for familiar locations and major 5e campaign adventures in the most popular D&D setting. Thank you to everyone for watching this very long video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel and support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.